Welcome to episode 5 of Make 'em Take 'em, and what a special episode we have for you today. We're at the halfway stage of the BBL regular season, give or take a game or two, so what better time than now to look at our All-Stars. We appreciate there isn't a BBL All-Star game, but if there were, who would get a jersey? To debate this, I'm joined by Seb Gignut.
Hi everyone, thanks for joining us for this special episode.
And Chris Mays.
Thanks for having me on this special occasion.
So, first, some housekeeping. I know how you basketball fans love some rules. Here's how we've set up the All-Star game. There'll be a North and a South team, and as a Southerner living in the North, I can vouch for the rivalry that this could stir up. The North team will comprise selections from the following clubs: Cheshire Phoenix, Glasgow Rocks, Leeds Force, Manchester Giants, Esh Group Eagles Newcastle, and DBL Sharks Sheffield. So therefore, logically, the South will comprise players from Bristol Flyers, Leicester Riders, London Lions, Plymouth Raiders, Surrey Scorchers and Worcester Wolves. One important point is that you can only select a maximum of 3 players from any one team. So the 12-strong rosters will incorporate a classic starting 5 of a point guard, shooting guard, small forward, power forward and centre. And to save any pedantic arguments, the allocation of players to specific positions will not be questioned. The remaining 7 bench players will incorporate 3 guards, 3 forwards and a big man, and then finally the selection of a coach and assistant coach for each team will be made. So we're going to kick things off with the North, and remember, these players are going to come from Phoenix, Rocks, Force, Giants, Eagles and Sharks. So first up, guys, here's our selections for the North point guard. Chris, who do you have as your starting point guard for the North?
For me, it's a big toss-up, and it's got to be coming from Sheffield. Maybe not, but for me, it's definitely Chris Alexander. I think the high-scoring thing, everybody wants a high-scoring point guard within an All-Star game coming as a starter, and his production during the season so far has been excellent for Sheffield.
Yeah, definitely been an impressive player so far for Sheffield. Seb, who's the Northern floor general for you?
Well, I've got to agree with Chris on this one. It's going to be Chris Alexander, isn't it, for the Sheffield Sharks? Awesome job this year, and I think he definitely deserves that starting spot.
Good, I'm glad I can have an argument with you guys now. For me, you can't look past Sar Nimley up at Newcastle. Just what he brings to the game: 17 points a game, 5.6 assists, almost 3.5 rebounds a game, and a guy that stands out. I think he's probably listed 5'7", 5'8". There's no way he's 5'7", 5'8". If he's touching 5'5", he's done well. He's wearing some impressive basketball boots if he's touching 5'5". And I just think it's that kind of personality, the exciting, explosive nature of Nimley for me, that gets the nod at the starting point guard position. So, on to the shooting guard position for the North. Another starting jersey. Seb, who's completing your backcourt for the North?
Oh, well, the reason I didn't give Nimley is because I only wanted to have one of the Newcastle dynamic duo in the starting lineup for variation purposes, and I think the shooting guard's going to be Jason Page. He's done a fantastic job from the start. What an impact he's had in the BBL, and I don't think you can really look past him for that choice. Okay,
and what about you, Chris? Who have you got as your shooting guard for the North?
100% agree with Seb, man. This guy, Page, he's probably the best scorer in the BBL right now. He's that guy that can do everything. He's a player that every coach would love because he's able to produce for himself and also play team basketball. He's a joy to watch, especially in this league this season. Breath of fresh air. So for me, for the North, it's got to be him.
Yeah, I think that's going to complete our first lock-in. All three of us agreeing on that one. Page, yeah. It's almost impossible to look past him in the North for the shooting guard position. Like you say, offensively, and that's what you're picking, let's be honest, the All-Star game. I'm sure I'll change my criteria as we get through these teams. I'll just pick and choose when I want to decide how I'm picking the players. But offensively, you're going to struggle to find a guy that produces as much. Defensively, yeah, you can probably nitpick on him. 39% from the perimeter, averaging just shy of 25 points per game. An unbelievable player. So yeah, I think that's the first lock-in then. So Page, we all agree for shooting guard for the North.
All-Star game as well.
Yeah.
All-Star game, no defense needed in that. Thank you very much.
Absolutely not. So we now enter the front court for the North. Chris, how is your 3-man selection looking? Who have you got down?
This was a tough one. For me, probably just coming back such a late time, back into the league for the first time. I kind of like the look of Malcolm Riley. I think he's an explosive scoring guard, and I kind of like him. I like the way he plays. I like the way he pushes. I like the way he's got the 3-point jump shot create off his dribble. I think he's an exciting guy to watch, and if he's able to consistently produce, I think he's worthy of that 3-man spot in the North.
Yeah, Riley can really turn the taps on offensively, can't he? He can score on you in very different ways as well. He can use his size as a mismatch, or he can take you outside and shoot the ball well. So yeah, no, Riley's an exciting prospect. Seb, what about you? Who gets your small forward position?
Well, we're having a lot of similar picks here, aren't we? I can see the list going down. I'm looking at my list, and it's sort of the same. And it's going to be Malcolm Riley, because that BBL Cup final performance is what really won me over. As you were saying a couple of weeks ago, Mark, he got those points so quietly, but he does his job, doesn't he? Every game, you don't really always notice he's on the court, but he's always got so many points. He's always filling the stats box. And I think that if anyone's going to make a difference late in this season, I think it's probably going to be someone like Malcolm Riley for Cheshire Phoenix. So yeah, I think he's thoroughly deserving of that starting free spot.
It's all right, Seb. You can rely on me to be awkward. I haven't gone for Malcolm Riley, but starting three-man. I've gone for Dirk Williams out of Sheffield. Just so exciting. Human highlight reel. He's doing it all over the court. 17 points per game, 42% from the perimeter. Putting Williams, Page and Nimley on the same court, for me, would just be an unbelievable feast for the eyes on the offensive end. So Williams gets the nod for me as my starting small forward for the North. So we now move on to the bigs. Seb, who's done enough to get the call up as power forward for the North?
Ooh, well, for power forward, I think it's going to be looking a little bit further down the table. For me, it's the Manchester Giants' David Kadiri. He has been, as you called him, Mr. Consistency. He is Mr. Consistent. And if he was on one of the better teams, I think he'd be challenging as one of the top bigs in the league. Well, he is already on a team that struggled, and he is one of those best players that you can always rely on every single week. And I want him in my starting lineup because he's just so consistent. Yeah,
it's an interesting one. I looked at Kadiri, and I think it comes down to that argument. Whenever you talk about kind of the NBA All-Star game, it's tough to pick a starting player from a team that are losing so badly all the time. So that puts a little bit of a shadow over him for me. What about you, Chris? Who have you gone for as your starting four-man for the North?
For me, I think it's one of the most talented four-men in the league. He's a guy that keeps the team together, exploits offense, clears up on the glass. It's good for me. It's gone for Glasgow with Kieran Achara. I think he's just a quality pro that deserves the credit sometimes, and doing what he's doing for that club up now, I think he really deserves a shot at this.
Yeah, no, I agree. For me, I think it's the same for me. And it probably shouldn't, but I think it extends outside of this season. I've gone for Achara as well. He's not averaging huge points, but he's just an absolute heart and soul, blood and passion kind of basketball player. And there's definitely a place in a All-Star game for that type of player for me. Obviously captain of GB as well. I just think it's definitely a good call. I've gone for him as well. So we've all got the one spot left in the starting five for the North. Chris, who's going to be protecting the rim for the North for you?
You can never deny a 7'1" guy that can put the ball on the floor, shoot it, and play his soul out for his team, pass the ball out, be exciting, bit of a character, charismatic. You gotta love it. So for me, you can't deny CJ Geddes at all. Just with his quality, his skill, his size, his touch, he's exciting to watch. Character, great for an All-Star game.
Yeah, absolutely. Seb, what about you? Who have you down as your big man for the North?
Again, agreeing with Chris, I've given this guy so much praise over the last couple of weeks, and he showed just how good he is in the BBL Cup final, and he's shown how good he is in the league with consecutive Player of the Month awards. It's CJ Geddes. He's really developing in his first professional season. He's such a talent, and he can go a long way in European basketball if he keeps on his same path, building and going forward. So yeah, CJ Geddes for me. Yeah,
I that's our second lock-in of the starting five. Yeah, I've got Geddes down. There's very few true big men in the BBL, so it's as much as he deserves the call-up, it is a limited choice with true big men, but he definitely deserves the call-up. He's such an exciting player to watch, and he's your kind of Shaq player. He's the big guy that and he comes with some attitude and with some bounce about him, and he's always trying to get pumped up and get the crowd pumped up. And I think the All-Star games are kind of built for the exaggerated kind of player in his size and the way he approaches the game. I think that's exactly what Geddes is. So that completes our starting five for the North. We're now going to look at the reserves. First up, we'll have a look at the three bench guards for the North. Seb, who are your backup littles for the North team?
Well, backup, first of all, one of them, it's a great sixth man to have off the bench. It's going to be Sa Nimley. Again, you could have had him in the starting lineup easily, and I feel a bit bad that he's not there, but he did a fantastic job, and he has done a fantastic job this season. So Sam Nimley's my first pick for guard.
Carry on, go through all three.
Oh, okay. We'll get some more picks out from me. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
My second guard, it's going to be Mackie McKnight from the Sheffield Sharks. I think in terms of the offensive production, that's what you want in an All-Star game. It's a bit special. You want that razzmatazz. So you've got to have a few Sheffield players in there who've just had such a good time and such fun offensively. Mackie McKnight, consistent. He's on the board all the time. So he's my second guard pick. And then my third guard pick, it's going to be a Glasgow player. It's going to be Earl Brown. He really is so fun to watch. At least he's one of my favourite players in the league. You always know what you're going to get from him. And yeah, I think he's a perfect guy to come off the bench and maybe win a game. So yeah, he's going to be my third and final guard pick.
Yeah, no, a strong three, that's for sure. Chris, what about you? Who's coming off the pine in the backcourt for the North for you?
I gotta stick as well with what Seb says on one of them, which is Nimley. Like you said at the beginning, you can't have somebody like that that's not coming off the bench and exciting the crowd with his short speed and his great shooting ability and quick speed down the floor, changing the pattern of the game. I think he's going to be really, really exciting to watch. For me, I cannot, I swear to life for me, I cannot say his second name. He plays for Cheshire, Robert
Sandoval.
Yeah, that's the one. I can't say his second
you and
name.
names. You're in the wrong sport if you can't cope with names.
But yeah, he, with his quality and control, he's very exciting, runs the floor very well. And if you put a good selection of players around him, he's quite exciting to find that wide open jump shot, move the ball up and down the floor. I kind of like the way he's been playing the last couple of weeks as well. And just to throw it in and to keep a Brit in there as well as my third guard, just because of the way he's come from really nothing, is Kofi Josephs. I think if he shoots the ball very well, he's quite exciting to watch up and down the floor. And just for his little work rate, he's been very close to Miles Hessen and how he's established himself within the league over the short period of time. I just think, for me, he needs a little shout to get in there.
Yeah, no, I think for me, Josephs is one of those. He was actually kind of sitting, hovering around. I got my spreadsheet open and he was getting dropped in and dropped out and moved around. I think it may be a season early for me. I think give it a season or two and he'd be a lock-in, if not for a starting spot, for a bench spot in the All-Star game. He's developing at a rate of knots, and it's great to see such a hot prospect, a hot young British prospect like that. My three guys, Chris Alexander. You guys have obviously gone through him already. Chris, you picked this guy, Rob Sandoval. Yeah. He's a great point guard, particularly for an All-Star game, because he's head up, he's looking for the pass. If you want to see alley-oops, you want a guy like Sandoval on the court because he's looking to find those guys making those cuts to the hole. And then the final one, no one's picked him. There might be a little bit of love just sharing it around amongst the teams, but he's also kind of the attitude he approaches the game. I've gone for Adrian Kiyinu at Leeds. He's averaging 18 points a game, and he's just hustle and energy. He just approaches a game with such vigour that he's after every single play. Maybe he doesn't make the smartest plays all the time, but just really hustles on both ends of the floor. And yeah, I think for that's kind of why I've rewarded him on that side of things. So that completes my three bench backcourt players. Moving on to the front court bench players. Chris, who are your backup bigs that you've selected for the North?
Well, I got old Mr. Reliable Darius Defoe. It's always interesting, keeping it competitive on the floor, very strong on the boards and everything. My second choice is Dirk Williams. How can you not have a player like such as him in an All-Star game? Just running the floor, attacking, just exciting the crowd with his superior athleticism. And then a hard-working standout from Ali Frazier. I think people underestimate him as well coming into this season, coming from the U20s, and he's actually showing that he perfectly deserves to be within this league and the job he's doing at Glasgow. My final pick at centre would be David Kadiri, simply because, especially what Seb said, the way he's had to fight all season and everything, he really does deserve a reward in this All-Star selection.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Seb, for you, which front court players do you have on the bench for the North?
Well, I've used the bench for the big men, at least, both in the North and the South, to sort of go for the unsung heroes in the league this season. I think the first player forward-wise is going to be Tony Rublicki at Sheffield Sharks. I think he's a bit of a jack of all trades. He really does a lot, and he doesn't really get the plaudits that he deserves in that Sheffield Sharks team from an offensive perspective. So he's my first pick there. I'm going to go back to Glasgow. Kieran Achari, you can't miss him out. Mr. Reliable. He has to go in an All-Star team because he's an All-Star guy. So he goes in there. And a third Glasgow player on the bench here. So a lot of cohesiveness, guys who know each other. It's going to be Gareth Murray as the third forward. So he's my selection there. And centre-wise, I'm probably going to give it to Zarko Jukic. That's a sneaky pick because centre, maybe not, but still, big man who does a lot for Newcastle, and they do rely on him quite a lot, maybe more than people say. So I think that's a solid bench, big man rotation.
Yeah, no, definitely an exciting roster that you've got there for the North. Same as Chris is both really exciting. For me, I lock mine out. Definitely going to be running some small ball and playing a little bit of fast and loose with positioning here. I've got Malcolm Riley. We've obviously gone through him. Earl Brown, absolutely love. He's just getting the job done. No problems from him. He's just, that kind of standout player. And also think he's got a few highlight plays in his locker to bring out. You guys have already mentioned him, David Kadiri, a guy that's averaging the double-double. Yeah, he should be in the starting five, but he's playing for a team that's second bottom of the league and struggling to win games, so it's tough to give him that starting five spot. If he's playing in a more competitive team, he certainly would have claimed that. And then, yeah, similar to you, Chris, my backup big man, Darius Defoe, just an absolute veteran of the BBL, and just year in, year out, keeps producing for Newcastle and deserves that final jersey in the Northern All-Star team. So that's the North almost completed. We've got one last task, and that will be who our coaching staff are for the North. So, Seb, who do you have as your head coach and assistant coach for the North?
Well, in terms of head coach, I think it's going to be a man who's very popular around the league and did just win the Coach of the Month award. That is Ben Thomas of the Cheshire Phoenix. Maybe the league position isn't as good as it could be, but I think Cheshire are improving, and it really was such a fairy tale win in the BBL Cup final on the whole road for the BBL Cup final, not just for the team, but for a rookie head coach in Ben Thomas. He's done a fantastic job. He's made such an impact in the BBL, and he's going to be a good coach, hopefully in this league, for a long time, and I think he's fully deserving of that head coach role. And then secondly, assistant, we're going to go to Glasgow. Tony Garbolotto. The Glasgow are moving forward. They're moving up the league, and they are going to be big challengers come at the end of this season. And I wouldn't be surprised to see him maybe lifting a trophy at the end of this season. I think Glasgow are really starting to come together, especially at home. So I think that's a natural pick for me for the assistant coach. Okay,
Chris, what about you? Who's got the coaching board in hand for the North?
I can only echo exactly what Seb said. You've got to give it to Ben Thomas just for the amazing achievement that he's been able to produce with Cheshire for the first half of the season, taking them to a first bit of trophy, the silverware, for a long, long time. It's a fantastic achievement at that club, and him and James also deserve the best accreditation that they can get. And secondly, now Tony had a rough start, being able to bring consistency in, has finally got his roster right, and he really is starting to move up that BBL table and impact in Scotland and with the Glasgow Rocks. So, hey, I think for me it's Ben at head coach and Tony at assistant.
I tell you something, you guys must not want to ever be able to go back to Newcastle. You must be brave. You must not be bothered about ever being able to be allowed back into Newcastle.
Hey, is he a player or a coach?
Okay. After telling them to lose against Manchester, they already hate me at Newcastle.
Oh, that's true. You've lost your rights anyway. No, for me, Fab's got to be head coach. Again, I think I'm being a bit cheeky because it probably extends a little bit outside of this season. But yeah, Fab sitting second in the league. It's not bad, really, and no doubt they'll be in for some knock-ins for some silverware, be it league titles or a playoff run at the back end. But completely agree with you. Just takes the assistant spot is Ben Thomas because of the cup win. I think for him to be head coach, for me, they'd have to have a better league record than they've got, if I'm completely honest with you, to take that head coach spot. But absolutely assistant coach. And I think that'd be a nice hat tip, the kind of veteran Fab with Ben Thomas under his wing on the North bench. So that's the North rosters completed for us. We'll now move on to the South team, which, remember, will be selected from the Flyers, Riders, Lions, Raiders, Scorchers and Wolves. So first up is a starting point guard position. Chris, who's your Southern floor general?
For me in the South, it's got to be my favourite, which is Justin Robinson. After the European career that he's had, starting to play very well and get back consistently again. He's a little joy to watch within the BBL because he brings a different value of pace and, scoring ability plus assist ratio. So to me, I can't see anybody else that can really take that starting spot away from him.
Okay, Seb, what about you? Who have you gone for as your starting point guard for the South?
I guess it's a bit boring, but totally agree with Chris once again. Justin Robinson, he's such a premium player, and I guess he's kept London alive a lot, especially in the first half of this season. He has been a go-to guy, and when he gets it going, hopefully later in the season, fully recovered from everything, he's going to be such a danger threat, and he's so exciting to watch. So yeah, Justin Robinson is an all-star player, and he did win all-star MVP back in the summer. So yeah, I think that's a good pick.
First person out of the hat for the South, and he's going to be a lock-in, so all three of us agree on this one. Justin Robinson, for me, there's so many different reasons, not only how he plays on the floor, but it's great for someone like Robinson to come back and hopefully finish his professional basketball career off in the UK, provide inspiration for young British players out there and show what you can achieve if you set your mind to it. He's had a great career across Europe. He's, the things he must have experienced in life, he must have led. So absolutely great for him to come back and inspire. And it's not just a hat tip to him. He's put on some great performances this year, and he has been missed while he's been injured. Although London have got some results, they're definitely weaker without him. So who will be joining him in your selections in the backcourt? Seb, what about you? Shooting guard that's going to start for the South.
Shooting guard, well, I'm going to have to find a way to sneak Tyler Bernardini in there. So he is a lock pick for me, at least somewhere on the court, because he's so versatile. He can play in quite a few different places, and I think he fits in there quite well, makes a good partnership with Justin Robinson. He's just been so good this season. He does it all from the start of the game to the end of the game, and he's really the guy that everyone at Leicester looks to, and they're the best team in the league, so you can't really go past someone like Tyler Bernardini, in my opinion. Okay,
Chris, what about you? Who have you selected?
I'm going to be boring again and go with Captain Fantastic himself and go with Tyler Bernardini. You can really go against the way he's actually playing right now. He's exciting to watch, big shot maker, and he's just been fantastic for the Riders.
Do you know what? This is a tough one for me because I think there are quite a few people that you could have potentially selected here. I've gone a little bit curveball, and I'll give my reason for it. I'll let you know who first. So it's Mike Ojo at Worcester. My reason being is, although he's not been consistent so far this season, if he gets hot, he's probably one of the hottest players in the South to score the ball. If he gets some confidence and gets the win behind him, he's a guy that could go off for 35, 40 points in an All-Star game. But you'll find that out in the first 3-4 minutes of the game. If he ain't feeling it, then he ain't going to go off for it. So that's kind of a bit of a curveball pick for me on Ojo on that one. So I disagree with you two guys on that one. Going on to the front court, Chris, who's taking your starting small forward spot?
I got to go. A couple of players really interested me, but I'm going to Bristol with this one and putting in Brandon Blocks. I think he's been fantastic for the Flyers for the last 2 years being in the league, and I really love his energy that he brings, and I think he's excellent to have in a 3-man spot in an All-Star selection.
Yeah, no, strong selection, that's for sure. Seb, what about you? Who's your starting 3-man for the South?
Well, again, I think it's an interesting pick. This time I'm going to finally disagree with Chris on a pick. I'm going to give it to another Leicester hero. It's going to be J.R. Holder. He's had such an impact, and I don't think he gets all the plaudits that he deserves. We haven't talked about him much, but he is just so fun to watch, and he was a menace defensively against Worcester on Friday night. He's someone that Leicester do rely on just as much as someone like Tyler Bernardini, just in a little bit of a different way. But I think he wins games late on, and that's exactly who I want in my All-Star game.
Yeah, no, I agree with you fully on this one. I've got J.R. Holder down as well. Ultimately, if you're in the team that's leading the league and you're leading that team in scoring, it's very difficult for us to avoid you in the All-Star selections. And I agree with you, he goes under the radar. He doesn't get all the plaudits that some of the other players get. But yeah, I've picked J.R. Holder for my starting small forward for the South as well. So next up, we move across to the power forward spot. Seb, who have you got in your starting 4-man spot for the South?
Well, I haven't mentioned Worcester yet, but they have so much depth. You've got to put someone in there, and it's going to be Robert Gilchrist is my pick there. Again, you've got guys, he sort of forms a three with Trayvon Palmer and Brandon Parrish, sort of a crazy three of players. And Robert Gilchrist has been fantastic this season, so undoubtedly he's my pick for that position.
Okay, moving on to you, Chris. Who have you got as your power forward?
Well, I did like J.R. Holder at the 3 spot, but because of the rules and everything that we have to oblige by here, I thought I saved the Leicester player for the 4-man spot, and I've gone with Andy Thompson. I think he's so dynamic, able to shoot the 3 post up, put the ball on the floor, play a lot of defense, block shots. I think he's a great addition to that Leicester side, and I think, going forward, I think he's probably one of the best 4-men in the league.
Yeah, I can see what you've seen in that kind of stretch. 4 is definitely an option. I've stayed with Leicester as well for my 4-man, but I've gone Pierre Hampton. He's just been so important for what Leicester have done this year. His IQ level as well, I think, will add a dynamic to the All-Star game as well. He's got some good vision as he's moving down the court, so I think that will add to some of the excitement within the All-Star game. So we've got one more starting spot left for the South. Chris, who's your beast in the paint for the South? Who's grabbing that final starter's jersey?
It's got to go to Worcester for me. and Baczynski has got to get in there. I mean, tough, aggressive on the boards, good finisher around the rim, likes to run the floor, put the ball on the floor, everything. He again against Geddes, a nice cup final matchup. See if he can. He started off pretty well, and then Worcester went away from him and didn't give him the ball anymore, and allowed Geddes to get on top of him. But him, for me, in the South, he's the winner for me at that centre position.
Okay, Seb, what about you? Who have you picked as your starting big man for the South?
Again, Dallin Baczynski all day, every day. He really is a beast in the paint, as you say. And it's the BBL Cup final rematch of CJ Geddes, and I think this time he'd win it because he is such a good player. And on his day, he's very, very dangerous. He fills every stat you want to look at. He gets everything done. Yeah, he didn't have a good game in the Cup final when perhaps he could have. He didn't have his best game. But overall, as big men go in this league, underneath the rim, you want someone like Dallin Baczynski, and I think he is absolutely fantastic and has been huge for Worcester this season.
Yeah, no, it's similar to the North starting five. This is our second lock-in for the South. I've got Baczynski down as well as my starting centre. Similar reasons to Geddes. He's one of the only true five men in the South Conference, but what an impressive player he's been. I think the thing that's frustrating is we probably haven't seen him fully fit very much this year. By all accounts, he played injured through the final. He hasn't played since. So I think a full fit Baczynski, like you say, against a Geddes in an all-star game, that's a great thing. We could have an entire episode of Make 'em Take 'em just breaking down that battle on its own. So yeah, Baczynski kind of closes out my starting five for the South as well. So we move on to the bench selections now, and first up, let's have a look at the three guard choices. Chris, who have you selected as your backcourt backup for the South?
My backcourt backup. Take my teeth in. We got to go. For me, you got to go for a veteran of the league, sort of now champion, with Neil Watson down in Plymouth. I also love the excitement of George Beeman from Worcester. I think he's playing pretty well. I think he's one of the most consistent players on that Worcester team right now over the period. And I also like to give a little shout out for Tony Hicks down in Surrey. I think he's had an exceptional season so far, and I think rewarding him with a position on the bench is good for him.
Okay, bizarrely enough, two of the three are the same as mine. I've got Watson and Hicks. I don't think Watson's performed to his fullest so far down in Plymouth. I think he'll get better as the season goes on, but he's an all-star kind of player. Plenty of passes, plenty of excitement coming from him. Again, Hicks, just a scorer, flat-out scorer. He'll get you points left, right and centre, but he also looks for his teammates, so an exciting player offensively. And this is where Tyler Bernardini fits in for me. He's made the bench within mine. What about you, Seb? Who are the guards that you're putting on the bench for the South?
Well, again, I agree with both of you in terms of two of those picks, two lock-ins, Neil Watson as one and Tony Hicks as another. I thought I managed to get Hicks in there pretty covertly, and no one else would have picked him, but I guess I was wrong in that regard, and rightly so. I guess everyone should pick him because he's been so good this season. He's had a huge impact for Surrey. So Neil Watson as well. And then my other pick, who disagrees with all of you, it's going to be Worcester's LVC Dusha, because the All-Star game is exciting. You want a guy who's exciting and maybe is a bit unconventional, and that is LVC Dusha. He's got those crazy passes in him, he can wow the crowd, and he's also a very good player offensively, and he sort of makes that Worcester team click. He might not score the points, but obviously that's not his whole focus. He's such a great passer, perhaps the best in the league, and you just want that excitement, don't you, in an all-star team, so you can't really look past LVC Dusha for me.
Yeah, no, I don't think you'll get many arguments with regards to Dusha. It really just does come down to you're so limited when you get to this all-star, when you're picking the cream of the crop. How do you carve it up? And for me, Dusha misses out, but I can absolutely see why people would put him in there. So that's the backcourt sorted out for the South. Now moving on to the four front-court bench players for the South. Seb, which bigs will be coming off the bench for your Southern team?
First off, it's going to be one that was in your starting lineup, I believe, Pierre Hampton. Of course, at Leicester, he's going to go in there because he's solid. And as we saw the other day from the bench, he has a huge impact. So he's in there. Keanu Rochford from the Plymouth Raiders. Again, maybe like the Kadiri pick, it's a team that aren't doing as well. But in terms of individual standouts, he's got to be in there somewhere for me. And an interesting pick, I'm going to go back to Leicester for the third and final time here. Or have I selected three Leicester players already? I might have done so. You might have to pick me up on that one, actually.
Oh,
I Yeah. Oh, I had Andy Thompson down as my pick here, but I think I have to put Andy Thompson in there. I'm not sure if I might have to change one of those Leicester picks. But,
dear! I tell you, you'll have basketball fans after you. There will be be lit torches and pitchforks patrolling the streets looking for you. You've broken the rules.
If you're going to pick 4 players, it's going to be Leicester, isn't it? So it could have been worse, I think.
Okay, we might have to find out a little bit later who your change would be then. What about you, Chris? Who's going to be your backup bigs for the South?
For me, I think I definitely agree with Seb with Rochford, the versatility of him, how he can impact a game. A little bit crazy too. I think he's perfect for an all-star selection coming off the bench. I like as well Corey Dixon. He started off in our league in Belgium at the beginning of the season, coming back to the BBL. Scoring, rebound, slasher, not great jump shot, but he's electrifying on the drive and he's able to, control the game at speed. I like that. Trayvon Wright, for me as well, from Leicester, another athletic, high-flying dunker that everybody really wants to watch and see. He excites the crowd. And maybe with the toughness, my final pick would be Brandon Beal, coming in to rough up them boards and bringing an extra bit of toughness to the 4-5 spot for this Southern team.
Okay, for me, you guys picked him up before, Boggs. I've moved him into the front court. He's just the kind of player you want in an all-star game. He'll get out on the break and look for the alley-oop. The double big man of Dixon and Rochford, very similar reasons. They're exciting players. They've got full of personality. They're exactly the kind of guys you want in an all-star game. They're going to give you highlight play after highlight play. And then the final one you guys haven't picked up on is a Scorchers player, Jordan Williams. Struggled at the beginning of the year with injuries, starting to find his form now. But again, he's kind of that big man. I think an interesting battle, Williams against Defoe it would be for me in my all-star game. I think that's a nice battle to watch. 2 British bigs going against each other. So that closes out the kind of jerseys for me. But moving on to the coaching staff for the South. Seb, who's your play caller to lead the South and who's going to be assisting them?
In terms of play caller, again, it's got to be someone who's really passionate on the sidelines and makes a difference, and it's going to be Rob Paternostro, isn't it? In terms of guys who's done so well this season, you can't look past Leicester in terms of how dominant they've been. He's such a good coach. He makes such an impact, and he's perfect guy to lead an all-star team. So Rob Paternostro for me. Okay,
and Chris, for you, who's going to be screaming at the South from courtside, and who's your assistant alongside them?
For me, it's got to be, I'm going with Seb. It's Mr. 300 wins, personally. Saturday night fever. Rob Paternostro on that sidelines. I always think he looks a bit like John Travolta coming up and down in sidelines, sometimes prancing on the sidelines. But he's a great character, great coach, and he's done wonderful things for that program. And again, with the lead that he has at the BBL right now coming into this break, it's for me, it's nobody else. As assistant, it's a toss-up between Creon and Andreas. I think both of them have established the budget side that they have and really made an impact for them. But for me, I'm possibly go with Creon just to edge Andreas.
Okay, interesting. I'm loving the description of Rob. I'm looking forward to the next time you bump into him. I agree with you. Absolute lock-in for the head coach. All three of us agree, Rob Paternostro. You just can't argue with what he's doing at Leicester, how dominant they are year after year. He puts a roster together and he gets them playing together as a team from day one. For me, again, a similar reason why I gave Ben Thomas the kind of the nod for the assistant coach in the North. Paul James to me, assistant coach of the South, getting Worcester to the final of the BBL Cup. They're in the semi-finals of the trophy. The league form's not where it should be, but that's kind of why he's gone in as assistant coach for me. So that concludes our all-star selections and in turn this episode of Make 'em Take 'em. What we'll do is we'll make sure that we put all of them up on Facebook so you guys can make some comments about how wonderful our selections are or otherwise. I hope you've had as much fun listening to this as we have putting it together. Just want to thank Seb and Chris for joining me today.
Thanks, man. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you very much for joining us.
And we'd also love to know who you'd select as well, so make sure you do let us know. Outside of that, we'll be back on Thursday with episode 6 as we look ahead to this weekend's BBL schedule, so make sure you tune in to that one. And I'll leave you with Jerry Tarkanian's strategy for building a successful basketball team. The secret is to have 8 great players and 4 others who will cheer like crazy. See you soon.